Trigger warning. We're about to say positive things about Sonny Dykes. Oh yeah, it's Locked On Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? I am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, host of your favorite daily one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, but you know it as the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and the number one sports podcast network in the country. We close out today's episode by taking a look at, I think Houston is BYU Lite. That's not a slight. That's just something that TCU is going to have to deal with. Segment 2, I don't think that the road game aspect of this matchup is going to play too much of a factor. And we kick this whole thing off with positive words about Sonny Dykes. I know it feels like it's been 2-3 weeks since we've said positive things about Dykes. Some are sitting there in anticipation. Some are sitting there ready to be angry because there's no way they could possibly agree that something good should be said about Sonny right now. And some have been sitting there hopefully waiting for me to say the things that they've been itching to get off of their chest. I hope to address everybody, but we need to commend Sonny Dykes for the way that he responded to the backlash, or the question that elicited the backlash on social media. For those who weren't here, for the full part of this story, I think that you need to go to Monday's episode where we talk about the initial reaction to Sonny Dykes telling TCU fans, say what you want to say, when questioned about the direction of this team, those who are concerned about the direction of this team. I think that is an important part of the story. It's a chapter that I can give you a synopsis of, but I cannot give you that full start from page 1 to the last page of the chapter. That is only going to be received by Monday. But basically, I thought it was lacking accountability. I thought it was tone deaf. I thought it was disrespectful. I thought it was dismissive. I thought that it was all around the worst thing that Sonny Dykes could have said. That was Saturday night, really early Sunday morning, but that was Saturday night. We talked about it on Monday. Dykes had his press conference on Tuesday, and I thought he did a great job reversing field on that. What I will say is, when you're looking at Sonny Dykes' comments, they started off bad. He made 2 statements on this. It was a question that plagued him. He actually ended up talking about it a third time. He brought it up once in a statement. He was asked, I think, a clarification question. Couldn't hear what the question was. He responded to that. And then a little bit later, he brought it up again. So this was obviously something that was weighing on him. I don't know if he saw it. I don't know if he felt it afterwards. I don't think it was a hard thing to really feel. It was obviously the wrong thing to say. But his answer, in my opinion, was really good. Many people will point out he talked about raising expectations because they came in and they went 12-0 in that first season. And I understand why that may, kind of rub people the wrong way. People are saying, you didn't raise expectations. That's not, no, we had success before you. Like that, don't make it sound as if we were never good. So 2022, they go 13-2, 12-0 in the regular season. They hadn't had a 10-win season. TCU hadn't had a 10-win season since 2017, but they had one in 17, 14, 15, 13. No, I'm sorry. In 15, 14, and 2017, That is 1, 2, 3, 10-plus win seasons since entering the Big 12. Many people felt as if it was dismissive to say that he rose the expectations, as if to say TCU wasn't nothing before that. I understand, but what I would say is you get beyond that headline, you get beyond that part right there. And I thought he actually said a lot of good things. Don't just boil down what Sonny Dykes said to that. That may even come off a little full of yourself. But when he details what the expectations are, which is something we've always known, I gave a criticism, I was going to say a critique, but I didn't say criticism. I was going to say criticism. That's not a word. It's critique and criticism. Which one do I want? Maybe both. Basically the same thing. But I gave a critique. I gave a criticism of lacking awareness. I've often given a criticism that I don't think he responds to criticism well. I think that whenever he feels challenged in his own success, that he begins to get a little snarky at times. I think he begins to lash out. I think that he just has bad answers. This was a person who sat down for a couple of days, thought about a question that he had a bad answer to, and really came back and answered. I don't think that he had to do that. I'm glad he did. I think that it was the best decision, a much better decision than what he said or chose to say. But he says that that's the expectation. Everybody knows it's talking about winning every game. Typical coach speak, but talking about being a good team, really. That's the expectation. Everybody knows it. If you fall short, that's what you have to figure out. What can you do better? And I can assure you that's what's happening right now in the program. He also said it's never okay to not play at our potential. These are little snippets. I really do suggest that you go out and watch the whole thing, but I can't give you it all. He speaks for probably about 5 minutes on this. When you combine the first answer, the second answer, those are probably 5 to 6 minutes, maybe 6.5 minutes of him talking about it. I can't read that whole transcript and I can't play it either. But there were a couple of things that stood out to me. And maybe the most important thing that he said, because this line right here tells me he understands. He finally gets it. And I mean finally, because we've had multiple times where I felt like he didn't really answer in a fashion that tells me he understands what's going on. TCU is not putting a good enough product on the field, and they have not been putting enough good product on the field. Sonny Dykes, in my opinion, has always tried to wash that away. Whenever there was a bad moment, it was always look at everything we've done. But with this one line, he said there's not a one-liner that can really surmise everything he's trying to say. I disagree. This does it very well. He says, in the 3 3/4 years that I've been here, we want to be more consistent as a program. And it feels like finally Dykes has acknowledged that this has not been a consistent program. And yes, he'll say that they're averaging 9 wins a season. He says it like it's a good thing. And you know what? It is a solid thing. But the eye test, what you have done lately has not been good. In saying that you want to have more consistency as a program speaks to that. Yes, you're a 6-win team right now. Maybe you can get to 8 in the regular season, 9 with the bowl game. Last year, you had to end really strong to get to 9. The year before that, it was just bad. And the year before that, you had 12 wins. This is a season or a program that's been kind of seesawing for a couple of seasons. And I'm glad that Dykes acknowledged that, because I know he knows it. I know he feels it, but I never feel like he ever presents it until Tuesday. Tuesday, he finally presented, and I want to commend him for that. That's good. The other thing he said, once again, starts bad, ends up getting better. But he says, I have complete, or excuse me, no. Where is it? He says, I like where I'm at right now. Where is it? I have this written down. Oh, I feel good about the situation we're in. Oh, that's a terrible first sentence. That's a terrible first sentence. But the next two are really good. He says, I feel good about the situation we're in. I'm not happy about where we're at, but I have a ton of confidence in this program to turn it around, basically. That's what you wanted to hear, right? He says, I have complete confidence in this program and where we're headed. I don't see it as a dire situation at all. I see it as a situation we're not happy about. If Sonny would have given this answer from the very beginning, there's no outrage. I gave comments about how I thought his statement could sever ties. You never want to be the one as a coach who severs the tie. Fans are always going to detach and attach. That's fans. That's fans. They're going to voice their frustration, and sometimes they're going to be out the door. But if you're sticking around, they're eventually going to be back with you if you can turn it around. But I feel like Sonny was cutting that tie. You don't want to do that as the coach. If Sonny Dykes would have answered the question on Saturday night like this, fans might not have been happy, right? It's not a dire situation. I feel like we can turn it around. That is, to me, hopefulness. Some may call it delusion, may say, oh, you just, you don't really see what's going on, But it's much better than being tone deaf, being unaware, being dismissive. It's much better than that. If you would have said in the 3 3/4 years that I've been here, we're searching for consistency as a program, people would have said, you get it, you see it. The only problem with Sonny Dykes at this point on this question is that he probably said it too late for many people. And he also said that he rose expectations. And when people are not really happy with you, no one's looking deeper in that quote. No one's going to look further beyond what you said and see how he says they're not living up to expectations. He said they're not playing up to their potential. That is a recognizing or a recognition of what's going wrong. And it's what we wanted the whole year. It's what we wanted the whole year. I don't even know if people are as upset with Sonny Dykes as they are right now. If at some point in the year after the Arizona State game or Kansas State, or really probably the Iowa State game was most people's breaking point. If Sonny Dykes expressed that, hey, we have not been playing up to our potential. We need to get that fixed. We need more consistency as a program. Yes, people are still going to be upset about the lack of consistency, but it's much different when you confront it head on as the head coach, as opposed to the last time we heard you talk about what you've done, you talked about your entire tenure. Then you come and say, all right, well, what about these 13 games? Like I said, it felt like excuses. It felt like no accountability. It felt dismissive of fans telling them say what they want. He was wrong for that. He knew he was wrong for that. He came back and apologized. And in my opinion, this was a much better answer. I commend him for the apology. I commend him for the accountability. And I commend him for this stance. I'm going to accept this stance as what it is that Sonny Dykes feels about the direction of the program. He doesn't think it's dire, a.k.a. I should still keep my job. I feel like we can turn around. Hey, if you keep me, we'll turn it around. I don't know what the hot seat's going to look like. His comments don't change that. Winning next week, winning this week, winning a bowl game, finishing on a 3-game winning streak, that probably will change it, though. Let's move forward and push forward, because one thing that you don't have to worry too much about that typically you do is a road game, hostile environment. I don't think you're getting that with the Cougars. I know, no disrespect, Cougs house, but the chant ain't enough. I'll explain why as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is official sports book of the NBA because the NBA is back and it's in full effect. It's full swing. It's rolling. You already know what time it is. Luka Doncic, Victor Wembanyama. You're looking at Chris Paul still playing, right? I hear Russell Westbrook is having a phenomenal season. Maybe you want to put some money down on Ant-Man Edwards. Maybe you're looking at Anthony Davis, who's on the trading block, or Cooper Flagg, whatever it is. You got players, you have individuals, and guess what? Just because the game started already, just because it's in the third quarter, doesn't mean that you can't make a little bit of money. Want to ride the hot hand? Want to bet on a comeback? All of these things are at your disposal. I suggest you do the easiest thing possible. Do the easiest thing possible, because people who are new to FanDuel, customers who are new, you put down a $5 bet. If it wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Then you can get a tad bit more risky, but you have to put down and win that $5 bet first. Money is yours and it's waiting on the table. I just want you to go and collect. Go to FanDuel.com or use the FanDuel app today. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. And thank you for making this your listen on a daily basis through a season that has not gone the way that you wanted it to go. Sincerely, I appreciate it. And if you want more, follow me on Twitter at South Exclusive. Starts with an S, ends with an S. Full transparency, I know typically we have our our crossover Thursday, and typically I would bring Parker Ainsworth of Locked On Cougs on the show on Thursday. We couldn't get this done Wednesday night, so we decided to do it Thursday night. I was going to do a live Thursday show, but Dykes' comments were kind of weighing on me, right? They were I just couldn't get them off my chest. I couldn't get them off my mind, so I wanted to come here and get it off my chest. So that's why we're just going to go ahead and pivot and move over to a crossover Friday right before the game. So that's what the schedule change is looking like. Next week, we're only going to have 3 episodes, though. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. I'm going to be on the road. I'm going to be traveling. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday for you next week. Anyway, now let's get to this game. TCU's fatal flaw has been their inability to be effective on the road, at least consistently. I think that they have shown up, then talking about the issues, they have shown up in pretty much every single road game since the North Carolina game. I would say that every single road game. Let me make sure I'm not speaking on my neck here, but I'm pretty sure I would say every single road game that you've had this year, you've seen some sort of struggle. North Carolina, smooth. Arizona State, We know how that close happened. You just did not end that game well. And I thought that once the crowd filled up, because everybody talked about how empty that Arizona State's crowd was at the beginning of the game, I thought once they filled up, you began to see a different TCU. And mind you, hostility versus non-hostility, really different when we're talking about road environments. That's why a neutral site, though you're traveling, is not the same as a road game because you don't have that level of hostility. And quite frankly, every stadium doesn't even have that level, period. But Arizona State struggled. Kansas State struggled. These are both losses that you had. West Virginia struggled, so especially in that second half where you feel like you are going to win this game. You're going to continue momentum. You're going to conquer these road woes. West Virginia is the team to do it against. But then you just fall flat in the second half. BYU, you have your absolute worst loss of the season. I think you played your worst game of the season. And yes, you played your best opponent. I think that probably had way more to do with it than being on the road. But also, you just looked absolutely like a shell of yourself. You looked like you didn't belong on the field. And is it a coincidence that it happened on the road? I don't know, right? Like I said, competition level, road environment, who knows? Either way, you got smacked up on the road yet again. But now you go against Houston. And whose house? Cougs house. Yeah, I know. I was right there. I was across the street, Third Ward. I know all about it. This is not the home field advantage that Provo is. This is not the home field advantage that West Virginia is. This is not the home field advantage that Arizona State was or Kansas State was, right? These are not the home field advantages that you had to go into in most of these times you had lost. But this is a team who, and this comes from Parker, he says it all the time, every single Texas school outside of their local, right? So outside of the Fort Worth area or the DFW area, you're going to probably have your biggest alumni base in Houston. I don't know if it's the biggest for TCU or not. I'm sure there's a lot of frogs who are there. I'm sure there's a lot of frogs who say it's the only Texas road game that we have. We're going to travel this year because you didn't go to Baylor. You didn't go to SMU. You got both of those games at home. So maybe you want to go on a road trip but stay within the state. You're not playing Tech. So even if you don't live in Houston, you can travel and you can get down to Houston. It's not a difficult journey for you, right? You just hop right on. I've never driven there from Fort Worth, but I hopped 360 to 287 when I was coming from Arlington, right? 360, 287, 45. Boom, I'm there. And now I'm riding down 45 the whole way. So I don't know what that road is like for you from Houston, from Fort Worth or whatnot, but this is the situation that, in my opinion, actually favors TCU a little bit. Then it just comes down to team versus team. Look at the spread. TCU is a 1.5 point underdog. Now, typically they say 3 points for a home stretch or home field advantage. You trying to tell me that TCU will be favored in this game if it were on a neutral site? No. This almost feels like they excluded home field advantage and said Houston is this type of team. They're 1.5 point better than TCU, but I could see it going the other way. It's a toss-up. That's what a 1.5 point spread is to Darrion. That's what that means to Darrion. But in my opinion, you don't have that same animosity. I don't feel like it's going to be a rough environment. If they beat you, it's probably just because they're better than you. And we'll talk about this with Parker tomorrow. I actually really want to get that idea of what home field advantage looks like. And I hope it doesn't come off disrespectful. But it's also senior night. I will say that. This is senior night. So if there was anything to be a little bit worried about, is that you will probably have a more hectic environment on a senior night. I just don't know how much that ratchets it up. Ratchets it up. I don't know how much it does that. So if it's a level 4 on a regular, does it become a level 6? You know, that's just 2 up. Does it become a level 7? Like, where does it go from where it is just because it's senior night? I don't know if it's going to be that rocking, to be honest. I think that had UH not lost to West Virginia, that's the other thing. You lost to West Virginia at home. Now, West Virginia, I understand they're starting to pick things up, but West Virginia on the road. So you look against TCU, they lost that game, but they were a little bit closer. Then they go to Houston the next week, and they win that game. Then they come back the next week against Colorado. They sneak by. They win by 7 points, that looks like. Yeah, 29-22. Then you go on the road to Arizona State, if you're talking about West Virginia, and you lose a close one, 23-25. So this team is picking it up, but at the same time, they're supposed to be different at home. They're not supposed to go to Cougs' house and knock them out. So to me, I understand there's a lot of moving parts around that, but I think that at the end of the day, it's you got to win that game if you're UH. And that right there makes me feel like the home field advantage isn't going to be huge. They are the better team, in my opinion. They are the better team. But I don't know if home field advantage is going to sway anything. But let me break down why I say they're the better team. Matter of fact, I think that Houston feels a lot like BYU, but on a lower level. So like BYU Lite is what I would describe them as. And we'll do that as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Houston to me is BYU Lite. And that's not something that is meant to be disrespectful, but I think they do a lot of the things that BYU does. They're just not as good. So the number one aspect that makes me think about BYU, and I made this comparison on the squad show, so you'll see that tonight. That'll come out Thursday night. But the one thing about Houston that compared to BYU is both of them just seem to pull out close games. They just seem to win close games. Let's look at what Houston does. They don't do it as often. They don't do it as often as BYU does. But you're looking at a game versus UCF. Against Central Florida, that game came down to the wire, and they threw an interception in the end zone. Big time play by the defense. Big time play by the defense because they were in field goal range to tie up the game and take it to overtime. You look against Arizona State, they just held on to that game, but still they were able to end it. They had a turnover on downs in their last possession. So with the game on the line, Arizona State had the ball and they just couldn't get it done, right? You look at Arizona the week prior, and they went to Arizona State and did that, by the way. Against Arizona State the week prior, they had a field goal, walk-off field goal. Oregon State earlier in that year, they had a overtime game. You have to come up clutch in that. Like, you may be less impressed with how games are close. Because, right, you don't want to be close against Colorado. You don't want to be close against Oregon State. You know, you don't want to. There's ways. I like Arizona more than other people, to be honest. I think Arizona is a solid team. I think Arizona is a solid team that doesn't get nearly enough of the credit that they deserve. But Houston just has close games, and they tend to win them. West Virginia won by 10, or they lost by 10, excuse me. Texas Tech, they just been beating everybody, so he lost by 24 points there. That's fine. But the ability to pull out games is the thing that I said about BYU, and it's if it gets close, you need to just win. I don't know if closing out games, that attribute goes to the opponent yet again. And I would even argue it's something that they tend to do pretty well once again, right? Like that's something you could have said about BYU. You say it about Houston. They have a quarterback who can throw and run. Just last week, Connor Wegman had 82 yards. 2 weeks before that, he had 111 yards. So that's 2 weeks this season that their quarterback, Connor Wegman, has been the leading rusher on the team. Both of those were victories. Typically, if a quarterback is your leading rusher, if Josh Hoover rushes for the most yards on this team, you lost. Period. There's not even a question. You lost this game. Houston has the ability to have their quarterback be their leading passer and their leading rusher and still come out with a victory against a quality team like Arizona State. Against a quality team like Arizona State, that's what happened. Wegman went for over 300 total yards with 100 of those coming on the ground. So that's the thing you have to look out for. The same way Bear Bachmeier, he could run the football. Both first-year quarterbacks at their university. First-year quarterback for Bachmeier in college. First year at UH for Wegman. So he was at Texas A&M before that. But you look at that. They want to run the football. They don't want to pass. You go through and you look at exactly what they do. I'm going to look at how often it is that they run and pass. So on purely attempts, BYU is 13th in the conference. Conference? What's up with me today? 13 in the conference in passing attempts. Houston is 15th. That is second to last. in passing attempts. Neither one of these teams really want to throw the ball all day, every day. So if you're talking about pure raw yardage, they're both middle of the pack. So they do it well, but they don't try to do it a lot. They don't try to do it a lot. Go to rushing attempts. Houston, 4th. BYU, 6th. This is what they do. Offensively, both of these teams want to run the football. Now, I think it was Marcus Deal. Who spoke at the press conference this week and said that Houston just isn't as physical. They still want to run the football. It's a different type of running. They're not as physical. They're not as imposing, hit you in the mouth. Okay, cool. Doesn't mean they're not a good football team. Doesn't mean they're not a good rushing football team. They just aren't as physical as BYU was. And go on the defensive side of the ball. Defensively, they both do things really well on both running and passing defense. You're going to need Josh Hoover to once again be the guy who does it all. Because BYU, I think, was top 5 in both. Let me see. In rushing right now, at least, BYU is 4th. UH is 5. In pass defense, BYU was 4th. UH is 7th. So slightly better rushing defenses on both sides, BYU and Houston. Actually, BYU is even now. But you're going to need to pass the football. That's what they do, in air quotes for anybody who's on audio, worse. TCU is going to rely on Josh Hoover. You're going to need big plays by Eric McAllister. You're going to need to have these plays early. Once again, TCU, please score points in the first quarter. If TCU wins or scores points in the first quarter, they're way more likely to win. But if they have to play catch up, I don't think it works, because then you become one-dimensional. Because we already know you don't want to run the football. That's the thing. TCU doesn't score points. They get behind. They become one-dimensional, but they're already one-dimensional, maybe out of lack of effectiveness, lack of desire to do it, but they don't run the football well or often. I looked at where UH was in rushing attempts. TCU, 16th, 317. 317. And I think Kansas State has been playing from behind all year. I don't think that they've been winning games all year, so... BYU Lite, dual threat quarterback, being able to finish out games, just their run pass ratio. You look at their defensive stats, all similar. BYU Lite, they just aren't. No one thinks they're as good as BYU, but they have some of the traits that I think will still trip up TCU in this game. Just please don't let it get to a chance where you have to finish. But if they do finish and they win their last road game, hey, everything can feel a little bit different going into a game with Cincinnati that probably is going to be on a 3-game losing streak, as you are on a 1-game winning streak. Fingers crossed. Who knows? Could just end up being a battle of 3-game losing streaks. I just hope it isn't. We'll be back tomorrow with Parker breaking down UH on our last episode of the week before you go to whose house? The Cougs' house. I'm sorry. I don't mean that to be funny. It's not funny at all. But I'm just thinking back to my undergrad years. All right. Undergrad, TSU. Anyway, in the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.